My name is Hannah, and I'm 28 years old. Last year, I made a decision that changed everything. I'm talking about the kind of decision that makes you question everyone you thought you knew. The kind that reveals people's true colors in the most devastating way possible. It started at what should have been a celebration. My brother's engagement party. Picture this. A beautiful backyard filled with fairy lights and the smell of barbecue. Everyone was laughing, clinking glasses, and congratulating my brother Marcus on finding his soulmate, Vanessa. I should have been happy. Instead, I was sitting at a picnic table, nursing a beer and trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. You see, Vanessa had just called me broke trash in front of our entire family. Her exact words were, "Maybe Hannah should focus on getting a real job instead of playing assistant all day." The silence that followed was deafening. My mom's face went pale. My dad cleared his throat awkwardly. And my brother? He just stood there saying nothing. That moment shattered something inside me. I realized I'd been living in denial about how my own family saw me. They thought I was a failure. A disappointment. Someone to be pitied or, worse, ignored entirely. But here's the thing they didn't know. They had no idea what was really happening in my life. They didn't know about the secret I'd been keeping. The one that would change everything. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about this life-changing decision, hit like and subscribe to hear more real stories about family loyalty and betrayal that might just change how you see your own relationships. What they didn't know was that my assistant job was actually working directly for one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. What they didn't know was that I'd been quietly building something extraordinary. Something that would prove just how wrong they were about me. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom with tears on my pillow, I made a promise to myself. I would show them exactly who Hannah really was. Not through words, but through actions they couldn't ignore or dismiss. I decided to conduct an experiment. A test that would reveal everyone's true feelings about me. It would be cruel, maybe even manipulative, but I needed to know where I really stood with the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. The plan was simple yet devastating. I would pretend to lose everything. My job, my apartment, my dignity. I would become the failure they already thought I was. And then I would watch how they treated me when I had nothing left to offer. What I discovered over the next 6 months would break my heart, rebuild it, and ultimately set me free. Let me paint you a picture of my family. We're the Johnsons, and from the outside, we look perfect. Sunday dinners, holiday traditions, and enough group photos to fill several albums. But underneath that Norman Rockwell exterior, things were much more complicated. My parents, David and Linda Johnson, are both retired teachers. They raised us with middle-class values and endless reminders about the importance of hard work. Dad's got silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Mom's got this way of making everyone feel welcome with her famous lasagna and gentle smile. Then there's my older brother Marcus. He's 31, married to his high school sweetheart Amy, and they have 2 adorable kids, Sophie and Jake. Marcus works in construction management and has this steady, reliable energy that everyone admires. He's the golden child who never caused our parents a moment's worry. My younger sister Rebecca is 25 and just finished her master's degree in psychology. She's got this fiery red hair and matching personality. Beck's always been the smart one, the one with plans and ambitions that impressed everyone at family gatherings. And then there's me, the middle child who somehow became the family disappointment, the one who never quite measured up to everyone's expectations. After college, while Marcus was building his career and Rebecca was pursuing graduate school, I took what everyone called a temporary assistant position. That was 6 years ago. To them, I was stuck, going nowhere, barely scraping by in a cramped studio apartment. What they didn't understand was that I wasn't just any assistant. I worked for Jonathan Mitchell, a tech billionaire who'd built 3 successful companies before his 40th birthday. He was brilliant, demanding, and saw potential in me that my own family missed. But I never talked about the real nature of my work. I never mentioned the strategic planning sessions I led, the client meetings where Jonathan introduced me as his right hand, the way he'd started giving me more responsibility and autonomy each year. I kept quiet because I was afraid that if I talked about my successes, I'd jinx them, afraid that my family would think I was bragging or being pretentious. So I let them believe what they wanted to believe. The dynamic got worse when Marcus started dating Vanessa 3 years ago. She's a pharmaceutical sales rep with perfectly straight blonde hair and an opinion about everything. From the moment she joined our family circle, she made it clear that she thought I was pathetic. Vanessa would make little comments during family dinners. "Hannah, don't you think it's time to find something more challenging?" Or, "My sister makes twice what you do and she's younger than you." Always delivered with a sweet smile that fooled everyone except me. The worst part was watching my family's reactions. They'd get uncomfortable, change the subject, but never defend me. Never tell Vanessa that her comments were inappropriate or hurtful. Rebecca started treating me like a charity case, offering to help me find better opportunities. My parents would give me these concerned looks and ask probing questions about my future plans. Even Marcus, my own brother, began talking to me like I was fragile or broken. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Like everyone sees a version of you that doesn't match who you really are? That's exactly how I felt every time we gathered together. The engagement party was just the final straw. When Vanessa called me broke trash, she wasn't just insulting me. She was voicing what everyone had been thinking but were too polite to say out loud. That's when I realized I needed to know the truth about where I stood with each of them. Planning my experiment felt like preparing for emotional surgery without anesthesia. I knew it would hurt, but I needed to cut away the infected parts of my relationships to see what, if anything, was healthy underneath. The first step was creating a believable crisis. I couldn't just say I lost my job. I needed details that would make the story convincing. So I crafted a narrative about corporate, restructuring, budget cuts, and being laid off despite my performance, the kind of story that happens to good people every day. I also invented a cascade of secondary problems: landlord selling my building, forcing me to move out, car breaking down and being too expensive to repair, credit cards maxed out from unexpected, medical bills. Each lie felt like swallowing glass, but I convinced myself it was necessary. The hardest part was getting Jonathan's cooperation. When I explained what I wanted to do, his reaction surprised me. "Hannah," he said, leaning back in his leather chair, "this sounds like you're setting yourself up for heartbreak. Are you sure you want to know what you'll find?" But Jonathan understood complicated family dynamics. His own father had cut him off financially when he dropped out of college to start his first company. He knew what it felt like to be underestimated by the people who should believe in you most. "If this is what you need to do, I'll support you," he said finally. "But I have one condition. If this gets too painful, if you need an out, you come to me immediately. Deal?" Meanwhile, I started noticing things I'd missed before, like how Vanessa would steer conversations away from my work whenever I tried to share something positive, or how my parents' eyes would glaze over when I mentioned projects I was excited about. Rebecca was different. She'd always been my closest sibling, the one I could talk to about anything. But lately, Even she'd been treating me with this careful, patronizing kindness that stung worse than outright criticism. The most painful realization was about Marcus. My big brother, who used to be my protector, had become a stranger. He'd chosen Vanessa's version of reality over mine. When she criticized me, he'd stay silent. When she made cruel jokes at my expense, he'd laugh along. I started documenting these interactions in a journal, not because I wanted to build a case against them, but because I needed to remind myself that I wasn't imagining the subtle cruelty. It was real, and it was escalating. 3 weeks after the engagement party, I put my plan into action. I called my mom first, knowing she'd spread the news to everyone else within hours. "Mom, I need to tell you something," I said, making my voice shake with just the right amount of distress. "I lost my job today. They're downsizing the entire department." Her reaction was exactly what I expected. Sympathy mixed with a hint of, "I saw this coming." She offered to help however she could, but I could hear the resignation in her voice. Like this was just another example of Hannah failing to launch. The calls started coming in within the hour. Rebecca offered to help me update my resume. Dad suggested I move back home temporarily. Marcus said he'd ask around for job openings in his company. But Vanessa's call was different. She didn't offer sympathy or help. Instead, she said, "Well, maybe this is the push you needed to finally get serious about your career." Even in my fake crisis, she couldn't resist twisting the knife. Over the next few weeks, I watched how each family member responded to my supposed downfall. Some reactions surprised me. Others confirmed my worst. Fears about how they really saw me. The experiment was working exactly as I'd planned, and it was destroying me. 2 months into my experiment, I was living a double life that was eating me alive. During the day, I worked at Jonathan's company, taking on increasingly complex projects and proving myself worthy of his growing trust. During evenings and weekends, I performed the role of desperate, struggling Hannah for my family. I'd moved into a deliberately shabby, furnished apartment across town. I bought clothes from thrift stores and drove a borrowed beater car that Jonathan's mechanic had rigged to look broken down, but still run. Every detail had to support the illusion. The responses from my family painted a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. My parents were kind but distant. They'd check on me with the same energy they'd use for an elderly neighbor. Concerned but not invested. They offered practical help like groceries and gas money, but never asked deeper questions about how I was feeling or what I really needed. Rebecca surprised me by being almost clinical in her approach. She sent me job listings daily and offered to practice interview techniques with me. But when I tried to talk about the emotional impact of losing everything, she'd redirect the conversation to actionable steps. It was like she couldn't handle seeing me as anything other than a problem to be solved. Marcus was the most heartbreaking. My brother, who used to call me just to chat, now only contacted me to deliver awkward pep talks about bouncing back and learning from this experience. When I asked if we could grab coffee like old times, he'd always have an excuse, usually involving Vanessa. But it was Vanessa who revealed her true nature most completely. She started treating my crisis like entertainment. She'd bring up my situation at family gatherings, always with fake concern that barely masked her satisfaction. "Poor Hannah," she'd say with a theatrical sigh. "It's so hard to watch someone struggle like this. Maybe it's time to consider a career change? Something more stable?" The breaking point came at Sunday dinner at my parents' house. The whole family was there, including Vanessa's parents, who were visiting from out of state. I was wearing one of my thrift store outfits, playing the part of defeated Hannah. Vanessa's mother was asking about everyone's careers when the conversation inevitably turned to me. I watched Vanessa's face light up with malicious glee. Hannah's going through a rough patch right now, Vanessa announced to the table. She lost her job a few months ago and is having trouble finding something new. It's been really challenging for the whole family. The way she said it made my unemployment sound like a character flaw rather than a circumstance. Like I was a burden everyone had to carry. But then she went further. Honestly, I think this might be good for Hannah in the long run, Vanessa continued, cutting into her roast beef with surgical precision. She'd gotten too comfortable in that dead-end assistant job. Sometimes people need a crisis to motivate them to reach their potential. The silence around the table was deafening. My parents looked uncomfortable. Rebecca stared at her plate. And Marcus? He nodded along like Vanessa was sharing profound wisdom. That's when something snapped inside me. You're right, Vanessa, I said quietly, setting down my fork. Sometimes, people do need a crisis to see things clearly. I looked around the table at faces that had become foreign to me. These people who claimed to love me had been so quick to accept my failure as inevitable, so ready to believe that I was exactly as limited as Vanessa claimed. Can I tell you all something? I continued, my voice getting stronger. This whole experience has taught me so much about who people really are when they think you have nothing to offer. My mother frowned. Hannah, what do you mean? If you're watching this and have ever felt underestimated by your own family, let me know in the comments. Sometimes the people closest to us can hurt us in ways strangers never could. I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo. It was me shaking hands with the mayor at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a community center my company had funded. I was wearing a designer suit and standing next to Jonathan, who had his arm around my shoulders like a proud mentor. This was taken last week, I said calmly. I never lost my job. I've been promoted twice this year. I'm now Jonathan Mitchell's Director of Strategic Operations, and next month, I'm becoming a partner in his new venture. The confusion on their faces was almost comical. Vanessa's fork had frozen halfway to her mouth. I wanted to see how you'd treat me if you thought. I had nothing, I continued. And now I know. The explosion that followed my revelation was everything I'd expected, and worse. Hurt feelings, angry accusations, and defensive justifications flew around that dining room like shrapnel from a bomb I detonated in the middle of Sunday dinner. My mother was the first to find her voice. Hannah, how could you lie to us like this? We were worried sick about you. But even her anger felt hollow. Where was this passionate concern when she thought I was actually struggling? My father just shook his head in disappointment. Not at what he'd learned about how they'd treated me, but at my deception. This isn't like you, Hannah. We raised you better than this. Rebecca was crying, but I couldn't tell if it was from hurt or embarrassment. I don't understand why you would do this to us. I was trying to help you. Marcus looked stunned, like he was trying to recalculate everything he thought he knew about his sister. Hannah, this is insane. You made us all look like terrible people. But it was Vanessa who revealed the most about herself in that moment. Instead of apologizing for the months of cruel comments, instead of acknowledging that she'd been wrong about me, she got angry. So what if you have a fancy job? She snapped, her sweet facade finally cracking completely. That doesn't change the fact that you're a manipulative, vindictive person. What kind of sister does this to her own family? The irony was breathtaking. I was manipulative for revealing their true characters, but she wasn't cruel for consistently attacking someone she thought was down and out. I stood up from the table, suddenly exhausted by the whole charade. You're right, I said to Vanessa. I am vindictive. I wanted to hurt you the way you hurt me. The difference is I'm honest about it. I turned to address the whole table. I'm not proud of what I did. But I'm not sorry I learned the truth about how you see me. I left that house knowing I might never be welcome there again. The next few months were the loneliest of my life. My phone stopped ringing for casual family check-ins. Holiday invitations became awkward negotiations. The easy closeness I'd taken for granted with Rebecca evaporated into stilted conversations that felt like diplomatic exchanges between hostile nations. But something unexpected happened during that period of exile. I started building the life I actually wanted instead of the one I thought would win my family's approval. Jonathan's mentorship deepened into genuine friendship. He helped me see that my family's limited view of my potential said more about them than it did about me. Under his guidance, I launched my own consulting firm specializing in helping family businesses navigate succession planning. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was helping other families communicate better while mine fell apart. I also started therapy with Dr. Sarah Chen, a brilliant woman who helped me understand the toxic dynamics I'd been swimming in for years. She helped me see that my experiment, while painful, had been a necessary amputation of relationships that were slowly poisoning my sense of self-worth. A year after that catastrophic Sunday dinner, my life looked completely different. 1 year later, I was standing in the conference room of my own company, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Mitchell & Johnson Consulting had grown faster than we dared to hope. I had 12 employees, offices in 3 cities, and a client list that read like a who's who of successful family enterprises. The irony still made me smile sometimes. I'd become an expert in fixing the exact kind of dysfunction that had nearly destroyed me. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon in March. It was my mother, and her voice had that careful quality that meant she was about to say something difficult. "Hannah, I know it's been a challenging year for all of us," she began. "Your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking about what happened." I waited, not making it easy for her. "We want you to know that we're proud of you. We've always been proud of you, but we realize we didn't show it in the right ways." It was a start, but it wasn't enough. Pride wasn't the same as respect, and respect wasn't the same as seeing me clearly. "Mom," I said gently, "I appreciate you calling, but pride isn't what I was missing from our family." The silence stretched between us like a bridge neither of us was sure how to cross. "What were you missing?" she asked finally. "Faith," I said without hesitation. "Faith that I knew what I was doing. Faith that I could handle my own life. Faith that I might actually be capable of things you couldn't see." That conversation opened a door that had been locked for a year. It took months of careful, sometimes painful discussions, but slowly, my parents and I began rebuilding our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect, rather than their concern and my need for approval. Rebecca and I found our way back to each other through letters, old-fashioned, handwritten letters where we could think carefully about what we wanted to say. She apologized for treating my life like a problem to be solved instead of a journey to be respected. I apologized for deceiving her when she was genuinely trying to help. Marcus was harder. My brother struggled to reconcile the sister he thought he knew with the woman who had manipulated an entire family crisis. It took time, and honest conversations about how Vanessa's influence had changed our dynamic, but eventually we found our footing again. As for Vanessa, she and I maintained a polite distance. She never apologized for her cruelty, and I never apologized for exposing it. Marcus eventually had to choose between his fiancée's need to be right and his relationship with his sister. The fact that he chose me, after everything, meant more than any apology ever could. If you've made it this far in the story, I want you to know something important. The people who love you should celebrate your successes, not just tolerate your failures. They should have faith in your judgment, even when they can't see your full picture. I learned that some relationships need to break before they can heal properly. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept treatment that diminishes your worth. My consulting work now focuses on helping families recognize when their good intentions are actually limiting the people they love. I've seen the same patterns play out in boardrooms and around kitchen tables. The subtle ways families can box each other into roles that no longer fit. The damage that comes from loving someone without truly seeing them. But I've also seen families transform when they learn to celebrate each other's growth instead of fearing it. When they choose curiosity over judgment. When they decide that love means believing in someone's potential, not managing their limitations. Have you ever felt misunderstood by the people closest to you? Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and demanding respect? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, if it made you think about your own family dynamics, please subscribe for more stories about navigating complex relationships and finding your authentic self. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we all need reminding that we're more capable than the people around us realize. The best revenge isn't proving people wrong about you. It's building a life so authentic and fulfilling that their opinions become irrelevant. It's surrounding yourself with people who see your potential and cheer for your success. That's the life I have now, and it's better than any Sunday dinner ever was. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember to like this video if it touched you, and let me know in the comments what family dynamics you've had to navigate. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear.